What's your personal experience of one man's trash is another man's treasure? Years ago, I moved out of town with my best friend at the time. He got into a school far away and did not want to live on campus. At the time, I worked in a Subway sandwich shop as an assistant manager. We came up with the idea that I'd find another restaurant to work in near the school he got into so that we could move in together, as I knew we'd miss each other like crazy and I had nothing tying me down at the time. After some searching, I found an opening for a management gig at, you guessed it, another Subway sandwich shop right down the street from the school. I applied, got an interview, we found an apartment, packed up a U-Haul truck, and hit the road. Not quite as simple as it sounds, though. All these things took months to get into place. If you've ever used a U-Haul location before, you've probably seen the little giveaway areas around the storage units. These are small, roped-off indoor areas where you can toss things you don't want or need. Sometimes when you move, you head to a smaller place and realize there's a lot of stuff you can't keep, like big furniture or various decorations. On the day we left, I noticed one of these spots in the U-Haul store for the first time, and in it was a single painting of a buffalo. And it was magnificent. I took it without a thought, and we headed for a new home. I hung that painting up and couldn't believe someone got rid of it. It's amazing. I stood in awe of how well painted it was and was wishing I could let the artist know how happy their throwaway made me. It was my first cherished possession. I made sandwiches for a living and had rent to pay at this point, so my bedroom consisted of a twin-size bed, a 13-inch TV, and this buffalo on the wall. No dresser, my clothes were in bags, but damn it, I love that buffalo. About 7 years later, that buffalo's gone everywhere with me. My friend and I still hang out and visit, although we don't have our bachelor pad anymore. Today, my fiance and I live in a home together. We both work part-time while we're going to school to become teachers, and the buffalo sits above our mantle, watching our lives unfold. I plan to have that buffalo in my will one day. I'm a huge fan of art, and it's only because someone threw away a brilliant painting and happened to leave it in my walking path. I've still never been able to track down the artist and thank them. The only clue I have is their initials in Spring 14 written on the frame. I'm guessing it was a spawn of one of the local community colleges during their Spring 2014 semester. If I ever do track them down, I'll update. Well, there's one way to get into art. Would have thought, buffalo pictures. I also actually hope that this painting will be worth a lot in the future. Story 2. True story, and it happened just 2 days ago. So me and two buddies were at the town dumpsters. They have a pull-up dumpster service free of charge for residents. And there's two 20-foot long or so containers with space in the middle, so you have to pull up to one or the other. I jumped out of the truck and climbed one to see which one was emptier so I could let the truck know. We had a truck bed and a trailer full of trash to throw away. The very first thing I see is a crap load of pristine lumber. Not just stumps and cuttings of 1x4s and 2x4s either. We're talking 5 foot long 12x12 beams, about a dozen 3x6-inch boards that were well over 10 feet long each, a couple 12-foot treated 4x4s, and one giant 2x12 board around 12 feet long. Now, me, I'm just a hobbyist. My buddy is a carpenter and we're roomies and just happened to really need to build a chicken coop among other things. Needless to say, we got excited. We claimed enough wood out of that dumpster that it filled the bottom of the trailer up completely. Near as we can figure, it was about $400 worth of lumber, if not more. And now we have a bunch of free projects to work on, and it was all because we just happened to arrive and check the right dumpster at the perfect time to throw away our trash. Story 3. Oh boy, I had mine last week, and it's also a r/raised by narcissists with r/entitled parents story. When I was out, my mom came to my place to take some things to charity, like she said the week prior, and I gave her one of my spare keys because I wasn't going to be home at the time. Big mistake. When I returned, some things that I didn't use anymore were missing, and I thought, cool, I didn't use that thing much, it'll be better if someone else have it. But I missed something really important, my arm desk, the one I used to work from home sometimes. I asked her about it, and she said that it was, quote, was almost in pieces. You'll throw that out anytime soon, so I did the work for you. But it wasn't. The arm just needed a new screw. She never cared much for my things anyway, so that is not something that bothered me much. But a week later, when I'm at my mother's house to see my brother, there it was, my desk, with my mother using it, not just the desk, but all the things that were missing from my house were there. I'll be short with this, but we argued for quite some time about her literally stealing my desk. I didn't care much about the other things, but I needed that desk. And she started the quote, "You just have this now anyway because I gave you education, etc. monologue. I just took my spare keys back, get out of there, filed a police report about that. I had some others about her sisters too, and changed my locks in case that she copied the keys. She did this before and always came to my house and used all my things without saying anything. Last week, while walking through my neighborhood, I saw someone throwing out a desk exactly like mine and asked him if I could have it, and he just gave it to me without asking any question. Later that day, I pressed charges against my mom and my aunts. Now I have a new arm desk, and neither my mom or her sisters can come 100 meters close to my house. What a wonderful week I had since. So I've personally never heard of something called an arm desk, but heck, if it makes this dude really happy, then I'm all in for arm desks. Story 4. I collect vintage cameras. Since I started, I was on a hunt for this one particular 80s camera, a Minolta Maxim 7000, but I came across them as being quite rare, couldn't find a decent one on eBay. They caused a bit of controversy back in the day and got the company sued due to infringing patents, so it was only about 3 to 4 years later that they brought out a new model. One of the problems is due to age. The LCD on the top slowly and permanently turns black and cannot be fixed. The hand grip also turns white due to an old degrading rubber. After about 2 years of no luck except for other cameras, I asked this antique store if they had any cameras. To my surprise, they bought out a whole box of old cameras, not just cameras, but electronics in general. Digging through, I found an old EOS digital camera that for some reason still had charge but didn't work, only showed an error and then the battery died. This was in like October, November too, so I'm in this antiques place that used to be an old warehouse or something, so no insulation. It's very cold. I also found an old multimeter that I admittedly broke, a poor old Pentax whose mirror was locked up. And that's when I saw it, this bag. It was sort of an 80s shoulder type bag, like the kind you'd associate with dodgy people. I thought it was going to be a generic 80s camcorder, and the bag was very dusty too. And it was cold, so I guess whatever was inside was probably broken, just like everything else was. I opened it, and inside was a fibrous interior in near perfect condition. A few lens caps, and it was missing half the case, but there it was, the camera I'd been searching for all this time, complete with frost. The lens was already installed, so I tried to get an image view. The viewfinder didn't work. Every single piece of glass had fogged up. There was also an extra Sigma lens there too, and the camera itself was in perfect shape except for the rubber turning somewhat white, age, and temperature. These cameras are known for having very delicate electronics. It is from the 80s, microcomputer revolution after all. So I gave them £10 as that's the lowest they'd let me go, and I didn't want to overpay due to the conditions it was left in for an unknown amount of time. In the car, there still wasn't any obvious signs of defrosting, so I just left it. By the time I'd got home, the camera had defrosted and I could see clearly through the finder. The rubber also cleaned up easily. I installed the 4 AAA batteries thinking it was probably dead from both age and its temperature torture in the antique shop. But to my surprise, the camera fired up. LCD was perfect, the AF was working perfectly, or as perfect as an 80s AF lens, the first of its kind, could work, and the shutter was working perfectly too. Bargain, somewhat rare, and I'd managed to get a good example. Unfortunately, it's not the original with the crossed X's that caused Minolta to be sued by Exxon, but it's still the one that caused them to be sued for millions by Honeywell over the AF system. And that's when I looked in the other compartments of the bag. I unzipped the front and found the original user's manual, fantastic. When I tried a side compartment and I found a user's manual for a remote shutter accessory, to my surprise, it was in there, and presumably working. I didn't test it, it just shorts 2 contacts, so nothing to go wrong really. I was so excited to buy it, I actually left the Sigma lens behind, so I had to go back a few days later to pick it up. The girl working there told me, "Well, unfortunately, we just had someone a few hours ago come in and buy a lot of this stuff." Sort of put fear in me, but I found the lens. It works, but turns out the gearbox for focusing is broken. Sounds like a worn-out car gearbox while focusing, and for that reason, I don't use it for fear it will damage the camera. Also, I ended up buying a digital Walkman from the same box that I sold to my brother. And no, before you PM me, I am not selling the camera. I'm happy for this person, honestly. It's like a 1 in a million chance to find something you've been wanting in some box full of random electronics. Alright, so don't worry, you guys. Don't have to look for other people's trash to find treasure. You can actually try to look for the like button and click on it and then subscribe to the channel. All right, done. Instant treasure, right? Congratulations. Now let's go ahead and get back to the stories. Story 5. I used to do a lot of flipping back when I was in school. I would frequent thrift shops. My two best hauls were first, a Disney Cars playset for 35 cents, sold it online for $50. Second, bought a fancy leather booklet for $2, sold it for $450. Third, bought a railroad log for $25 and sold it for $300. Fourth, golf club traveling case for $10, sold it for $100. Some guy was about to hop on a plane and wanted to put his scuba equipment in it. Fifth, carbon fiber golf clubs for $18, sold for $200. Then bought two corner shelves for $100 and resold them for $500. Sixth, bought in bulk a bunch of comics for $25 and plucked out the garbage ones and traded for an HP computer. And finally, bought a Roomba at thrift shop for $25, took it home and it worked, sold it for $200 plus a 25-inch TV. I just finished the Appalachian Trail and had $14 in my bank account. I moved back in with my parents and my mom had me bring some brush to the town dump. There is a little section to drop off things other people might want. There were bins upon bins of electron tubes, all in their original cardboard boxes. I had no idea what they were or what they were for, but I knew they were worth more than free, so I loaded them all into my truck. I put a few lots on eBay, left for a week to take a WFR class. When I came back, they had sold for a total of $1,600. The guy buying them admitted he was going to go through them, test them, and sell them individually on eBay. I didn't care. I did minimal work and was broke. Story 6. Surprised not to see anything from garbage men or women. As a garbage man, I found tons of good stuff. All kinds of electronics, TVs, GPSs, game systems, computers, and more. Furniture like tables and chairs, really anything that someone might have in the home. Sometimes you'd find brand new things never even opened. Once in a while, you'd get some lady pissed off at her man and she'd throw his perfectly good stuff away, sometimes even with a note with something like, free stuff, good condition, husband/boyfriend is just a jerk. Got good stuff when military people move. They could only take so much or just didn't want to take it at all. Cool stuff from other countries like art, toys, electronics, and money. Jewelry would turn up often too. Diamonds, gold, and silver would pop up. After citywide cleanups and citywide garbage sales, you could get a lot of perfectly fine stuff as well. Same with after Christmas and tax returns. Now this is where I might lose you, but food was good for the taking too. Some places would have to make room for new inventory and throw out unexpired stuff. This was more tricky because you'd have to figure out when it went out. But I got tons of Twinkies and the like, peanuts for months, jerky for days, and sandwiches for hours. The best part of that, too, was digging it out of the dumpster, opening it, and eating in front of people walking by. These places are really clean when it comes to how they throw it away, so it's like grabbing it off the shelf, but your mind has to wrap around the idea that it just came out of a dumpster. We also recycled. We would have the bars and small restaurants separate their cans, so you'd get lots of cans and then things like metal cookware and electrical cords. We made an extra $1,000 a month just from that. Really, I can't write a post long enough to tell about all the stuff we would find. All right, so now you think you were balling with your job? Probably not even close after this story. Turns out in trash, there is a lot of cash. Story 7. When I was 13 years old, we had no TV because our set, 25-inch color, broke down for good. We couldn't afford to have it fixed or buy a new set, so we went without TV. All we had was a 4-inch screen, black and white portable, but the screen didn't work, only the sound. Fast forward around a year and a half later, I'm hanging out with my then best friend in his apartment building. One of his neighbors puts out a portable 12-inch color TV to be thrown out. My friend grabs it, takes it to his apartment, and plugs it in to see if it works. It does, but the image on the screen is really, really bad. Clearly something inside the TV is busted. No wonder the neighbor was throwing it out. My friend, knowing I had no TV except for the little portable with only sound, gave me his fine, saying, now you have a TV. However, his mother decided she wanted the TV for herself, so she gave me their old 1960s 19-inch black and white set that they had kept in a closet. It had a beautiful image, but according to them, it had no sound. But they pointed out I can use the little portable for sound. I didn't want to make this trade, but I didn't have the inner confidence to speak up and refuse, so I accepted the trade and took their TV home. When I got home and plugged it in, I discovered much to my delight that it did have sound, though faint. As I fiddled with the volume knob, I discovered that when I pressed and put pressure on the knob, it got full volume. When I stopped pressing on it, the volume went away. So I used a paperweight that I hooked onto the volume knob in order to keep it pressed down at all times so that I could have sound and adjust the sound however I liked. Story 8. Over here, we have the occasional curbside collection, where the local council encourages folks to put large items out on the nature strip to be taken away and disposed of. Of course, plenty of folks will be keeping an eye out for any goodies that might be getting chucked out. A lot of my friends are heavily into the hard rubbish. That's what said items are generally called, whether they're left out during the official collection period or not, seen, and will scour the streets for hidden treasures. In fact, the house where several members of that group live, basically our home base, is largely populated by items of furniture they've salvaged from the curb. No, it's not as ghetto as it sounds. It's actually a really cool setup. They have all sorts of weird items. Oh, and one time in the early days of that place, my best buddy and I were coming back from an exceptionally baked pizza mission when we stumbled across a tall wooden totem pole left in an alley outside of a shop. We had to have it. I carried the pizzas as my friend lugged this unwieldy object the rest of the way home, like Jesus bearing his cross or some crap. It was surreal. That totem pole now sits in a corner of the pad watching over all who chill before it. Story 9. Once I was walking down my alley and I noticed a bunch of trash bags sitting out of the can. I took a peek in and noticed a Sega Dreamcast. Needless to say, I pulled open that bag and a few of the other ones in and out of the can. All in all, I found the Dreamcast, 4 controllers, a ton of Dreamcast games, a bunch of Game Boy Advance games, Bionicles, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon cards. 12-year-old me hit the jackpot. I held on to all that stuff for years. Later in high school, I found out one of my friends lived in that house that I found all the stuff at. In shock, I told him about how I found all of his stuff. It turned out that he and his family were doing a huge house-wide cleaning session. Tons of stuff was getting thrown away, and my buddy was also moving bedrooms. His mom had mixed up a few garbage bags with all his old stuff he had packed up to store away and chucked it all. Then, when they realized the trash had already come the next day. So I ended up saving all of his stuff from the dump and was able to return all of it to him years later. He let me keep the Dreamcast and the Bionicles though, so literally one man's accidental trash was my treasure. Both of those days hold very fond places in my memory. Dude, could you imagine all your Pokemon games that your mom threw away when you were 12? All your time and effort put into the saves? All your cards that you piecemeal together? Suddenly coming back to you after that long? Years? Probably feels like quite a trip. Story 10. I found a PSP at a garage sale and they were selling it for like $35. The PSP just came out like a year ago and I really wanted one. I asked what was wrong with it. The guy said the screen just turned off after playing it for a few hours. Bought it, took it home, and put it to charge. It came on with no issues. Everything was working. That's when I realized, holy crap, the battery just died and he didn't even think it needed a charge. A family had a sale to get rid of their worldly goods and satanic temptations because they wanted to renew their faith in God. To each their own, no biggie. I did, however, walk out of that yard sale with a binder of old MTG cards that paid my student loans off and most of my car. It cost me $25 and they refused to take more money. I felt kind of bad, but they were just dead set on removing this kind of stuff. I just hope they didn't have a college-age son who didn't know that their cards were sold for peanuts. Also, I live in a very small house in a very rich neighborhood. By comparison, I am basically just trailer trash. These people throw out barely used suede couches worth thousands of dollars and stylized glass tables. Literally got a free working, albeit old BMW because the guy was too lazy to sell or fix it. All of these rich people trash is just my treasure. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm pretty sure you're also going to enjoy Garbage Man. What's the weirdest thing you've seen thrown out? The person in story 3 hit a gold mine. I'll see you in that video, and thank you for watching this one.